Hey guys, Fabio Armijo here, and I have a special guest with me today, founder of Alliance Jiu-Jitsu, Mr. Fabio Gurgel. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today, so make sure you watch the whole video. We're going to be giving out a ton of tips and tricks to how to run your academies better, but also just go more into the history of Alliance and just a lot of really cool things to show you guys. So stay tuned and don't forget to like and subscribe. Hey Fabio, nice to
Hey,
see you again,
buddy.
brother.
Wow.
Yeah.
A pleasure to be here.
It felt like it was going to take forever for this moment to come,
Oh, yeah.
but it's here. We're
Finally
here in,
here.
I don't want to say sunny California. It's a little bit gloomy today, but there's no rain. It's warm outside and not as bad of traffic as São Paulo, right?
Beautiful. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
cool.
Really enjoying.
I know the story of Alliance. We've talked so many hours and days and weeks about, how and why you started Alliance along with Jacare and Gigi. But I wanted to dive into, a little bit of the story if you don't mind.
Of course. First of all, nice t-shirt, huh?
Yeah, I know we're matching,
So
kind of.
it's 93 is not that the number of titles you have. It's still 15, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So 93 is the year that we established Alliance as a competition team, I would say, right? And the reason behind that was that Jacaré started his own academy in 85 in Ipanema, Rio de Janeiro. So it was a very tiny academy,
Mm.
maybe 600 square feet, and I was 14 years old and started training there, and Gigi came right after. And what happened was during the journey, I got my brown belt, and then with 19, I was the first black belt promoted by Jacaré to the black belt level, and then I moved to start teaching on my own. And
In
what
the
happened,
gym, at his gym?
I teach his gym since I was a blue belt,
Got it.
helping him.
I see.
When I got my brown, I got an opportunity to start teaching somewhere
I
else.
see. Okay.
And I start building my own students.
Hmm.
And my students and Jacare's students start to face each other in the tournaments. And that situation was weird, very awkward. I said, come on, how my students are fighting against the guys that I'm training with every day. That was no sense. And the same started happening with Gigi as well. Say, look, we can keep doing this, and what probably gonna happen is that we're gonna separate at some point, or you can merge and do one group only.
Hmm.
We're gonna choose the best students that we have. We're gonna represent Alliance, and it's not wasn't Alliance in that time, but we're gonna represent that flag, and maybe we're gonna get something strong, and we
Hmm.
can be the best team in the world. That was the dream, right?
Hmm.
Back in '93, and we decided to do that move. We merge, we create Alliance, and that's a very important thing. We create a name that doesn't really mean anybody, right? And so everybody could come under that flag and represent. So that's how we started back in '93.
And to your point about everyone can come underneath the flag, right? Because you could have had Fabio Gurgel Jiu-Jitsu, right? It's a pretty common thing we see. A black belt wants to open his own school, and he opens up his own school under his name, right? And uh, talk to me about even at an early age, you understood that, hey, I don't want it to be my name or Jacare's name or Gigi's name. I want it to be something that people can identify with.
I think that we deal with people with a lot of egos, right?
Mm.
Because we need to have,
Mm.
right? The champions need to have that ego, in order to be a champion.
Right.
That is There is no separation possible when you are in that journey in order to become a champion. But then, what's the natural process? Okay, you become champion and then you want to teach because that's when, you know, your career is going to end at some point and you want to continue in jiu-jitsu, so you start teaching. Because you're famous in that moment, you think that your name going to be that important forever.
Mm.
Because we had different heads and minds and names, we need to choose a different path.
Mm.
Because, okay, we could choose Jacaré's name and say, you're going to represent Jacaré forever.
Mm.
But then it's a kind of, what about Fabio? What about Gigi? what about the other guys that are coming and wants to also have their names?
Right.
So I think Jacaré was very, I would say, humble and wise in order to let go and say, "Hey, I don't need to have my name on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's choose a different name that everybody can fit in."
I see.
And we came up with Alliance. I think it was a great name. I loved the first moment, and I loved so much till now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
And how did the eagle become the logo?
and then the thing is, the we have the we choose the triangle, which is very, I would say, a very strong symbol for many other things,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you go to Christianity, you have the, Father, Son, and Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
Saint Spirit. And
Holy
if you go
Ghost. Yeah.
to other things, the triangle is a very important figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the eagle, which is the animal that is no predator,
No predator. Yeah.
no predator, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
So that's the kind of combo
Mm.
make our logo so strong.
When you see athletes today, we talked about this, and my professor Johnny Faria, who luckily found Jacare at a tournament one time, and we switched from our existing flag over
Uh-huh.
to Alliance. Thankfully, he was Faria Jiu Jitsu Club. You know, he just didn't really know any better. And to me, obviously, he has some of the greatest jiu jitsu in the world. But whether he has a big name or not, he was relying kind of to your point, like on he just didn't know what else to do, right? His name and jiu-jitsu club, right? Pretty common thing. When we talked about fading as a champion, this is something we talked about in the past. Like, okay, you might win one world title, you might win two, you might win three, but every year there's always a new champion. So can you talk a little bit about that, about how your name over time will fade?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. The thing we were talking about, the ego of the athlete and the champion, and if you remains with that ego and bring that ego to the business,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna fail because you shouldn't act as you act as a champion when it comes to the business, because you need to put more people on board,
Mm-hmm.
right? And good people don't want to be under your own name. So to give you a practical example, imagine that if I choose to have Fabio Gurgel as the name of my team, and then I produce Marcelo Garcia
Mm-hmm.
under me. Marcelo Garcia is a better athlete than I was. He became better. So at certain point, he would say, "Oh, come on, man. You know, I don't want to be under Fabio Gurgel because I'm Marcelo Garcia." And later on, we had Cobrinha and Michael Langhi and Lucas Lepri and Bruno Mofassini. And how can all those guys be under my name?
Mm-hmm.
It's so I think that you're gonna choose from, okay, I'm gonna keep my name and message my ego forever and don't have anyone good enough under you,
Right.
or you're gonna create a different platform
Mm-hmm.
where everybody can belong to with no rivalry between names.
Right.
Right? We just add more talents, more skills
Mm-hmm.
to a platform that can be beneficial for everybody. And I think that's the idea behind the alliance. How can we create a better platform in jiu-jitsu where
Mm-hmm.
everybody can benefit from?
Yeah, it's pretty rare, right, to see. Obviously, you mentioned Marcelo, and like Roger Gracie. Obviously, is a good friend of both of ours. Has a very successful academy in London, but it's pretty rare to see a name carry on after retirement, especially after a couple of years. Because there's how
Almost
many? 10 new
nobody.
champions a year?
I
How
think
many?
you said one, Roger Gracie.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
question now is for how long?
yeah, yeah.
I have spoke with Roger many times about that, and he agreed. He said, "Man, I did it, and I should have done this.
Mhm.
Now it's hard to change, yeah, and it is hard to change.
Right.
Right? But I think every time, every year that pass, becomes harder for you to keep that name relevant,
Hmm.
and you're gonna get old. And when you get old, there is no more energy. Why people maybe the guys that are starting doesn't even know you,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I think that's one big mistake I believe in jiu-jitsu is that when you're in it for a long time, it becomes our bubble, you know. But and as popular as jiu-jitsu is getting, and as much as it's exploding around the world, it still is like very niche, right?
Hmm.
It's a very small group of people that understand there's even competitions, right? The average person that walks in off the street, I'm one of them, 12 years ago, I didn't even know they had competitions. I just knew there was jiu-jitsu
Hmm.
because I'd heard about it from the UFC, but I didn't know that there was even these competitions, let alone world champion competitors, And so in our bubble, we kind of think the champions are well known, but in all reality, if you want a successful gym, your name isn't going to be applicable to someone on the outside. They don't really know, right? And so that's why I think Alliance is pretty brilliant. This goes into my next thing is that we just won the world championships this past weekend here in Long Beach, 15-time world champion. That's the stuff people can look up,
Yeah,
right? And they can identify. Yes, they might look up that you were also world champion, I think 2 or 3 times.
4 times.
4 times, sorry, had to correct myself there. 4 times, but I think that, to say that a team is 15-time world champion, can you talk a little bit about like how big of a deal that is in terms of how many years the championships have been going on and how we've won more than half?
Yeah, we won more than half.
Yeah,
The World Championship started in '96
96.
was the
Okay.
first.
Yeah,
We won '98 and '99, and then we have the alliance split in 2001. So we got back 2008. We won the longest strike ever in the sport. We got 9 consecutive titles from 2008 to 2016, and then we lost 2, and then we got again 19, and we lost again, and then we back to the podium 20, 23, 24,
hmm,
and now 25. So have 15 titles. The second school uh, has 7,
I see.
and the last time they won was 2007, and they are not even close. They are not in the 10 best academies anymore. So
Hmm.
they completely uh, they are completely out of the game.
Hmm.
My point is, I really believe that competition is very important to keep you sharp and keep you in the highest level possible in terms of technique,
Hmm.
right? That's the label that we don't want to miss because that's our DNA.
Hmm.
We were built in '93 to be the best team in the world. So we won't forget that, right? So that's the reason why Alliance exists.
Hmm.
But more important than that, to your point, is we know that Jiu-Jitsu can go way bigger than it is
Hmm.
because tournaments and competition is a very small thing, it's very niche.
Hmm.
So we build the schools to really impact people's lives around our academies,
Hmm.
right? So it's not our goal is not collect more talents to compete. That's a consequence,
Hmm.
right? So we build academies for people, and when we do that, we have much more people doing it.
Hmm.
Consequently, we have more business growing,
Hmm.
so more successful instructors, more successful academy owners. And that's again going back to the platform system where Alliance created a lot of stuff to help those guys to succeed.
Hmm.
And so the competition is just a tiny part of the whole
Right.
thing,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest mistakes in jiu-jitsu is that the instructors, because they were raised in competition,
Hmm.
they think that that's the most important thing,
Right.
right? So they focus 100% on competition. And when we do that, we you just shrink your academy because you're making your academy for the toughest guys on the planet.
Hmm.
So you're not offering jiu-jitsu for regular people.
Right.
So your academy is small, and if
Hmm.
your academy is small, how can you compete with Alliance with 40,000 students around the world? So
Right.
there's no competition, right? So it's going to be very hard for you.
Right.
if you focus just on competition.
But just across jiu-jitsu, like what are the biggest pitfalls that you see as to why gyms are not successful?
I think I would say that the first and most common one is when you don't have a methodology in
Mhm.
place. You don't have a methodology means that you don't have levels
Mhm.
in your schedule. Imagine if you want to learn anything else. Let's go out of jiu-jitsu world,
All right,
right?
let's do it.
And then you go to university and the guy say, you go to that class in the fifth year to study, some crazy
Calculus or something.
calculation,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
mathematic thing, very difficult, nuclear mathematics. And I say, come on, I have no clue about what the guy's talking about.
Right.
In jiu-jitsu, it's not different.
Hmm.
If you get a white belt that never done jiu-jitsu before and put that guy in a class where people are doing maybe a butterfly sweep, which is a simple move, there is no connection between what these guys know and that technique itself.
Hmm.
So if there is no connection, doesn't matter if the guy this thing that is being taught is easy, because it doesn't mean nothing to me.
Hmm.
So I got this motivated and I leave.
Yeah.
So jiu-jitsu has been losing students, like tons of students,
Hmm.
because the schools are not prepared. They are not dividing levels. They are not creating a journey to the student. If you go to the business world, you know that all the companies are trying to create the journey of the client, right?
Hmm.
To keep that guy hooked for, as long as possible.
Of course. Yeah.
Jiu-Jitsu already have that
Hmm.
because you have the belt system, you have that, thing that were created back in the days, and people are not using.
Hmm.
You are just dropping everybody on the same class, and most of the times because the instructors doesn't want to work that hard.
Yeah. To that point, I just brought on a new manager at our San Diego and our Chula Vista locations, and I asked her what her experience was in jujitsu, and it's funny because she's like, "Well, I've done two classes. I went to a local gym in San Diego and did two classes." I'm like, "Oh, how'd that go?" And she's like, "Well, the way that they warmed up is they said just roll, but it was my first day. I didn't know what to do."
See,
And she's like, "It was fun,
it's
but
always a
I just,
crime, in my opinion.
yeah, I mean, to be fair, that's how I learned. But to your point, then you rely too much on someone being tough or having an ego to say, "Hey, I got beat up. I want to try to go back the next day," and then you're minimizing your pool of people.
Of
But
course,
yeah, so it still goes on today. I
I
mean,
know,
2025, it just happened.
and I'm gonna explain you why. So the first thing is people use to replicate what they learn.
Hmm.
So the way they learn in Brazil back in the days, and if you do a very simple calculation, the guys that are running the schools nowadays is the guys that are 35, 45, right?
Yeah.
Let's say that range.
Right.
They've probably been in the US for 10 years, 15 years. So they came from a background where jiu-jitsu in Brazil was doing exactly the same mistake.
Hmm.
90s and 2000s were the year that I call those guys survivors,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Because they passed through the test.
Hmm.
Because all the academies in that time were very focused on competition and making the students as tough as possible. Jiu-jitsu wasn't a friendly environment in
Hmm.
that time. If the jiu-jitsu wasn't a friendly environment, it means that jiu-jitsu were losing students, the academy was shrinking,
Hmm.
and there was no money. That's why people travel to the US for a new market to say, Brazil, I can't survive anymore. So we're gonna try something else in the US.
Hmm.
They came to the US and they start replicate what they learned. But that was a bad system.
Hmm.
And that's what the US got. What we are bringing now
Hmm.
is the solution of that problem that you we faced in Brazil during those years, because we didn't leave. We stay and we fix the problem.
Right.
So now our academies in São Paulo runs with 1,200 students, right? More than 1,200, like 900 in Vila Olympia plus 500 in for
Yeah,
1,400,
1,400, yeah.
right? We learned that that system was wrong, and how we create a better environment, how we make jiu-jitsu friendly again. Because it was friendly when the Gracie family started back in 60s, 70s.
I see.
You know, when I learned jiu-jitsu was very friendly. So I got this memory.
Right.
I said, man, I got in love with this. Because, not because was, a hard training. Because I learned something incredibly intelligent. So we just brought this back with the methodology. And who is using the methodology is progressing.
Yeah, that was my next question is with all that being one of the biggest problems of why academies fail, why is Alliance the solution? And obviously it's the methodology.
Methodology for sure.
And I think it's important for those that are tuning in today who do not have like real access to what an academy is supposed to look like. Fabio, as we all know, has really created the blueprint for what success is. As you just mentioned, he has one of the academies in São Paulo that has close to 900 students, which I want to point out an important point is that when people say they have 300 students, 200 or 400, that's one piece of the equation, right? That's X. But what is Y? Y is the price, right? What are they paying? What is the average person paying at your gym? That equals really the revenue. Let's take out merchandise and everything else. So if I have 500 students paying $50 a month, and he has 900 paying $300 a month, like not only does he have 300 more students-ish, or excuse me, 3 times more students, but he's charging 3 times the price. So really it's a 9x on revenue. It's not just 3, So that being said, he has the blueprint for that, and that's what we're trying to bring here.